Well, luckily, I might add that as everybody knows who read the newspapers at that time, the weather was just terrible. Uh, it was snowing and blowing and cold, very miserable. It kept our Air Force grounded, so they couldn't help out for about a 2-week period. And finally it cleared, and the Air Force was able to come in and neutralize a lot of those German tanks and so forth. And we finally got rid of the bulge and went back to more or less our standard operating procedures. One of the mysteries of Germany that I've never been able to figure out was some sunken roads. My squad was ordered to walk about 4 miles into a small little farming community, about 5 or 6 houses, and clear a road that went down just past those houses, down into a big long valley. It's quite similar to looking down off Cabbage Hill in toward Pendleton, the big long sweeping valley that this little road wound down through. So when we got to this, and as we were walking toward this little town, we came upon this sunken road, and we walked down it for about 1.5 miles until we got into the town. The road was about 4.5 feet deep and was about 7 to 8 or so feet wide, and went right through the middle of this what looked like farmland. And I don't know yet what those sunken roads were for, why they were there, and what they did with them. I encountered one a little later, as I'll tell you about. But when we got to this little town, I went and talked to the lieutenant who was in charge of the infantrymen. They were already there, and they'd taken shelter in the houses that were there. And he told me that their orders were to wait, that the Army was going to try an experiment. Well, the house that we chose had a tank sitting in front of it, out on the side toward the little valley that I spoke of. And that probably saved our lives, because soon they brought another tank up with a great big speaker mounted on it, and they drove right up to the edge of this valley and made a big long speech in German. And I'm sure they were telling them that they were outnumbered and that it would save lives on both sides if they'd give up and surrender their arms, and that they would be taken care of and given food and so on. But anyway, just a few minutes after this big speech ended, the 88 started falling on this town. And there was a couple fell outside of our house, and we started down to the basement, and the basement window was blown in, so we had to turn around and go back up. And the Davenport I'd been sitting in was just riddled by shrapnel. You could see the padding sticking out, the holes that it made. But none of us were hit. But at the same time, we could hear the screams of the infantrymen, because their house was hit. One of those 88 shells fell right in the doorway, and the floor was tile, so it didn't absorb any of the shock. All of it went, and there were pieces of infantry guys lying outside, scattered around in the house. And my medic took off right in the middle of that fusillade to go help them, and was successful in stopping a lot of the bleeding and saved some of their lives, I'm sure. And I wrote him up for a Bronze Star Medal for his unselfish, caring attitude, not being concerned about his own life as he rushed over there to help them. Well, after the bombardment ended, I went down and took a look at the road, and it was a very small road. It was macadamized, and I felt that it was pretty much a one-man job. So I told my crew to just stay there and wait, and that I would take a minesweeper and clean the road myself, and for them to wait for me to come back, and then we'd march back to our CP. I realized that the infantry had not jumped off yet, and that there were German soldiers all around in the trees around this area where I was going. And you have to realize that when you're running a mine detector, you've got your rifle strapped across your back, and you're completely helpless as far as defending yourself. And so my skin was crawling, and I didn't know what was going to happen, but I found a few mines shortly after I started down the road, and I pulled them out and tossed them off into the brush on the side of the road. They were hastily put in there and very poorly concealed, and so I was able to detect them right away and get rid of them. And then I walked on down what I considered to be 2.5 or 3 miles, and didn't find any more mines at all. And so I decided that they hadn't mined the road except right there at the beginning. So I turned around and came back, and as I came back, the infantry were prodding German soldiers out of their foxholes right there, and I'd walked right through them. And why they didn't shoot me, I'll never know. But I was given a Bronze Star award for that, what was considered to be above and beyond the normal course of my duties for that operation. A couple months after that, I encountered another sunken road. I was sent out by myself to investigate a report of some mines that the infantry had sent in, and I walked down this sunken road and came to an intersection of another sunken road that met it at right angles. And I stepped into that intersection and looked to my right, and there were 5 or 6 German soldiers lying on the bank about 60 or 70 yards down to my right, under some scraggly trees. Well, I jumped back past that intersection to hide myself, and I tell you the truth, I was just scared to death, because I knew that all they had to do was run a man down the field to get into that sunken road behind me and put one over in front, and they had me boxed. There was nothing I could do to defend myself except shoot as much as I could. Well, I didn't hear anybody moving or hear anything at all, so I put my helmet on the end of my rifle and eased it out into that intersection, and nothing happened. So I pulled it back and put it back on, and then I gingerly stepped out and looked down and saw absolutely no motion whatever from those soldiers. So I wondered if they were playing possum on me and wait until I got closer so they'd have a good clean shot at me. But still there was no movement whatsoever, so I just walked up there and found that they were all dead. Well, I was so thankful, and marched on past them and went on to fulfill my objective. But still, the mystery of those sunken roads still clings to me,